You ever have a day where someone runs at you screaming like you just set off a bomb in their living room, when all you're doing is sitting in your own yard, minding your own business? That was me, bright and early, standing beside a rented bulldozer, legal permits in hand, when Joyce Halverson, self-declared queen of Sunset Hills, came barreling down the gravel, waving paperwork like she was about to put me in handcuffs. I'll never forget how she shouted, "Stop right there," like I was the villain trying to dam the Mississippi with a toy shovel. You know what I mean? She had this look, absolutely sure she could shut down my project just because she chaired the neighborhood board. Wildlife, bylaws, fines, she threw it all at me, like she printed the citations herself. The thing is, Joyce didn't know the game she just walked into. See, I wasn't just a regular Joe who moved in for suburban peace. I was the regional supervisor for the State Environmental Protection Agency, undercover, investigating 6 months' worth of complaints about dead fish showing up in the picture-perfect creek snaking through our quiet cul-de-sac. Sunset Hills was about to be the star of the biggest undercover sting of my career, and Joyce, the woman who fancied herself an eco-warrior, was the lead actress. She just didn't know it yet. For months, I played my part, a neighbor jogging at sunrise, swapping stories at cookouts, always a friendly face but never letting on what I was really there for. I bought the house right on Creekside Drive, told folks I was some freelance consultant, and quietly gathered evidence. Every odd fertilizer truck, every late-night garden job, every rumor of things getting swept under the rug by the board. I set up cameras, took notes, and waited for someone to overplay their hand. The morning I scheduled that Bulldozer was the day I finally dangled my bait. Right on cue, Joyce showed up in a blazer meant to look like a uniform, clipboard ready, a homemade, construction prohibited sign tucked under her arm. She marched up, planted herself between my property and the creek like she was about to sacrifice herself for the greater good. I am Joyce Halverson, chairman of the Sunset Hills Neighborhood Management Board, and I am ordering you to cease this environmentally destructive activity immediately. Her words echoed off the trees. I swear, the squirrels looked up like, here she goes again. No, I played dumb. Held out my real estate permits, asked all innocent, "Is there a neighborhood rule I'm missing, ma'am?" And watched her eyes go wild with the thrill of power. She snatched the papers, barely glanced at them, then rolled out a speech about environmental protection laws, how she studied them better than any bureaucrat, how she had the authority to halt anything that threatened her habitat. She slammed her sign into the dirt, glared at the bulldozer operator until he killed the engine, and ordered me to leave. Meanwhile, every word, every wild gesture, every phony regulation caught in high definition by my hidden security cams, uploaded live to my agency account. See, there's an art to being underestimated. I apologized, thanked her for the education, promised to study up. Then I went inside, sat at my laptop, and started the report. Subject responded exactly as predicted. I grinned, picturing my colleagues reading her grandstanding speech back at headquarters. She was walking right into the trap and thought she was building a wall. The next morning, the cardboard sign was gone, replaced by a shiny metal one, twice as big, in bold red, "Access prohibited. Responsibility, Chairman Joyce Halverson." It was like she signed her own confession in stainless steel. Things escalated fast. While I was sipping coffee, someone slipped a violation notice under my door. $500 fine for deliberate violation of environmental integrity, all on HOA letterhead, with official stamps, signatures, and references to bylaws she invented from thin air. She wasn't just playing sheriff, she was making up the laws as she went. I spent a few days strolling the neighborhood, testing the waters with casual chat. "Joyce sure knows her environmental stuff, huh?" I'd say. The responses? Mrs. Patterson whispered she made the Hendersons rip out their flower garden, said bees would get lost. Mr. Thompson grumbled about how Joyce banned solar panels at the community center, claimed they'd disturb the birds. The more I listened, the clearer it was folks feared her more than they respected her. But the big twist came from my neighbor David Miller, a quiet guy with sharp eyes. Over a fence one evening, he shared how Joyce once fought the city for weeks, tried to block tree trimming, said it would break the tree's energy flow. She wrote dozens of angry letters to officials, calling them vandals. It sounded unhinged, but honestly, Her grip on the neighborhood came down to one thing. Nobody wanted to challenge her because she wrapped herself in a cloak of science and law, and most folks didn't know better. Then, while reviewing camera footage, I caught Joyce out by the creek, directing a maintenance worker, spraying chemical herbicides right where the fish had been dying. She pointed, they sprayed. The clipboard was her magic wand. Suddenly, the pattern clicked. She wasn't saving the ecosystem, she was poisoning it, all while playing the hero. I watched the clip again and again, letting the full irony sink in. There it was, proof she was the very cause of the disaster she blamed everyone else for. Now, armed with receipts, literally, thousands of dollars in HOA funds spent on banned chemicals, all signed off by Joyce herself, I was ready for the endgame. But she made it even easier. Believing she'd scared me into obedience, Joyce filed a formal complaint to the state environmental agency against me. She wrote a novel, buried me in made-up violations, submitted it with a flourish. I watched her mail it, glowing with pride, never guessing her complaint would land on my own desk. Tuesday, I sat in my real office, sipping coffee, when my inbox pinged, urgent complaint, Arthur Vance, environmental threat. I almost spit out my drink. Here was the queen of Sunset Hills, trying to weaponize the state against me, never suspecting the man she targeted was the very one with the authority to expose her whole con. I dropped her complaint straight into the case file, then cross-checked the HOA's records, every illegal chemical order, every signed invoice, every phony bylaw.to make sure she heard the walls closing in. I called my supervisor from the backyard. Loud enough for the neighborhood grapevine. He's taken the bait completely, I said. Right then, David Miller walked by, ears perking up, putting pieces together. Arthur, that didn't sound like landscaping, he said, looking worried. I shrugged it off. Just project stuff, nothing for the neighbors to worry about. But the rumor mill was working overtime. Joyce called an emergency community meeting, hoping to make me a public example. I arrived to find her with an entire press conference setup. Charts, posters, reports. She looked more like a government scientist than a neighbor. She started strong, proclaiming her expertise, waving fake environmental standards, reciting bylaws that didn't exist. She had the crowd in the palm of her hand, some nodding, some taking notes, nobody daring to interrupt. But then, right at her crescendo, I raised my hand. Excuse me, Joyce, could you clarify where you found those specific statutes? She paused, confused, fumbled her binder. That was my cue. I stepped forward, pulled out my own evidence, and introduced myself, regional supervisor, state EPA, undercover for 6 months, and everything she'd done was documented and about to be reviewed by real authorities. The crowd fell silent. Then murmurs erupted, shock, anger, even relief. Joyce's face drained of color. My agency team arrived minutes later, presented her with a formal notice. It was over. The queen had built her throne on poison, and in the end, she'd signed her own downfall. You could feel the weight lifting from the whole neighborhood as the truth came out. And here's where it gets messy. Some folks wanted her gone. Others said she meant well but lost her way. Some blamed the system. Some blamed themselves for staying silent. So what's your take? Who's responsible when self-declared protectors become the very problem? Where's the line between community leadership and abuse of power? Drop your thoughts below. Let's get real about what justice and accountability should look like in our own backyards.